A very good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. I am happy to welcome you all to the 165th BASL webinar and the 8th episode of the 5th webinar series, Beyond Code Practice. The webinars are conducted on the Zoom platform, and for those who have been unable to register on Zoom, could also join by watching the live stream on the BASL YouTube channel. These webinar series are organized by the Seminars Committee of the BASL, Chairman of the Seminars Committee, and Secretary BASL, Mr. Rajiv Amarasuriya, whose brainchild the BASL webinar series is. Convener of the Seminars Committee, Assistant Secretary BASL, Mr. Pasindu Silva, and the co-conveners, Mr. Pandula Vanniyarachchi, Mr. Oshan Uberatna, Ms. Ann Devananda, and Ms. Nakini Mapitigama. I further take this opportunity to thank the President of the BASL, Mr. Salia Pires, President's Council, and the other members of the Management Committee of the BASL for the support and the guidance given to us. Today's episode is with Ms. Renuka M. Weerakone, Acting Director General of Board of Investment of Sri Lanka, and interviewed and introduced by Mr. Chanakya Jayadeva, Attorney at Law. Without any further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Jayadeva to take over. Sir.
Thank you, Vasini. Thank you, and very good evening to you, and welcome to the 8th episode of Beyond Code Practice. As you heard in the introduction, this is a series we are trying to educate people as to how you can make it great in other than practicing in court or being a boardroom lawyer, courtroom lawyer, or deed lawyer alone. That is basically how and what avenues you can pursue in despite being a lawyer in this field of business, service, and other sectors. So today, Renuka Weerakone is our guest, and she's the acting Director General of the Board of Investment Sri Lanka. Renuka is an attorney at law, and we have lots to talk with Renuka because she's also a person who has had the experience of being a practicing lawyer and then took a paradigm shift to become a business per se, a person who's involved in a type of business, which is nothing but, as you know, the BOI is dealing with the business of investment. Renuka also holds an MBA from the Postgraduate Institute of Management from the University of Sri Jawadarapura. Let's go dive straight into Renuka's experiences and her thoughts. Good evening, Renuka.
Good evening,
how are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
You're good, right. One of the, as you know, as I told you in our sessions, is that we are targeting this to our young lawyers, Renuka, young people who have, who are actually, if you talk to them now, students wise, as well as young up and coming lawyers, they are looking into other avenues as well. But if you could remember when you were young and when I was there, when we were coming out, somewhere or the other, we were thinking only of the practicing side of law, either being in the law firm or being going to a good chamber, or else maybe a little bit of teaching, right? Or start writing deeds or becoming maximum a legal officer, right? But you, along with the 7 other people we have interviewed in this series, are lawyers who have made it great, not by being a practicing lawyer per se, right? But being, shall I say, not invading, but going into other streams of business. And you are in the business of investment and also a kind of a regulatory body and a facilitating body of the government. Now, before we go into all those details, how you made those made your CV coming into being and how you made those come up with the ladder, tell me something. When you started law, I think you told me you were practicing under someone and you did work in the law field, right, per se. Tell me a little bit of that experience and what made you transform from that to a different sphere.
Well, actually, Chanakya, when I took oaths in 1989, little did I think, I mean, as you correctly said, we thought we would be limited to either court work or some other corporate legal office. So when I took oaths in 89 and I joined Sundarlingam Associates as an instructing attorney, I really didn't think I'll venture out into anything else. But with time and with my marriage and starting a young family, I didn't think that was the most suitable thing for me to be doing court work. So, I mean, it was in an indirect kind of way that I just stumbled upon going into the corporate sector in the government in the government field. When my brother at that time thought, why don't you? I mean, he could see that I was struggling with my little ones and trying to do court work, going for late night consultations. So he had seen this advertisement at the BOI for a legal officer, assistant manager, and he himself took it upon himself to do my CV and submit an application. He just came and said, okay, you sign this, I'm going to submit this for you. And be that as it may, I sat for an examination and got through that. There were just two of us who had qualified for the final round. And at that interview, I was chosen and I joined as a legal officer to the Board of Investment. So my journey into this sphere was quite by accident, I think. And I have been able to, come to this position through a lot of other areas that I have been handling at the BOI. So that's just a small background, Janakya.
Right. So you are, what makes you unique from our other speakers is that, like I said in the introduction, you were in the legal, not only legal practice, even to this investment house, you went as a legal person, right? So there you got a lot of, obviously, the regular work that a legal officer does, not regular work, the work that is different from institution to institution, but whatever you did in that institution. Thereafter, there was a transformation from there to the workings of the business per se, which that institution does it. How did that happen? Well, was it something that you felt, now I want to ask you this, was it something that you felt that you could do better that way than being somebody who's you see, maximum you can end up is like legal director or something like that. And correct me if I'm wrong, I have not seen people who have ended up in legal director position in government, semi-government or private sector becoming chairmen, right? Who have not had the first experience. So is that the case? You wanted to go up further up in the ladder, or you were fed up with the law, or what was it?
Well, actually, when I joined, it was there was a bit of a mess up in all at that time, President Premadasa had started the 200 garment factory program. Yeah. And many investors had been given lands to go and start their operations, and they had got their banking loans, all of that just on the word of the president that the legal part of the land allocations would be done. So most of them had started up and they were without title to their lands. So that's the time they needed a legal officer to come in and sort this mess out. So I joined to do that. And then when I went to legal, they said all the documentation is at regional development. Would you mind clearing it up from there and then coming back to the legal once that is sorted? So I happened to go into regional development, and I was sorting out this mess and giving out the leases, seeing that some transfers were done to these companies. And at the same time, we were also expanding into our export processing zones, and we needed to do acquisitions, land acquisitions under the Land Acquisition Act and such activities. So it fell upon me to do those things as well. So when doing this, I was like going out into the field, and it was a different experience. It's not like you're just having a brief or you're just curtailed to one type of activity. And I rather enjoyed that, because if it, like, say, the candy industrial zone, I'm the one who went there and I did the acquisition, met with the people that had to be relocated. So it was a whole new world for me, and I liked it. So while I was working there, there was another opportunity. Then I thought, okay, I'm not going into legal. I'm going to be here, because there was like so many things happening, which my legal background helped me to achieve in a very fast manner, because thus far they have been struggling to do these things, but now with my knowledge, it was easy to function in that department. So with that, there was another vacancy. Actually, this department was reclassified as project implementation. So I managed to go up as a assistant. I joined as assistant director, then I became a manager. So as manager, I was in project implementation, and there it was again a whole new gamut of things where investors had bottlenecks that had to be cleared, policies, regulations, things that had to be looked at to help them to do their business better. So again, the legal grounding was the factor that helped to get things sorted out in a quick manner, in a manner that helped the investor and helped the organization as well. Going on from implementation, I think at that time, the management acknowledged that maybe this person has more talent that can be tapped into. So they offered me a place in the promotions department. and I moved into the promotions department. And at that time, it was at the senior manager level. So I was at promotions, and there again, like arguing a case, you pitch to an investor, okay, come here and invest. These are the points that, are attractive, come here. So again, it was a whole different experience. You met with a lot of foreign as well as local investors. You interacted with different government agencies, with policymakers. You submit cabinet papers, you submit policy papers. So it was again very interesting and a diverse kind of activity that I was doing. So moving on from there, I then became the board secretary, and which again gave a whole lot of experience in terms of, I've been through I think so many chairman and director generals and board members, and I've seen the way they take decisions. I've learned from that. And then I moved on to become a director and an executive director. And then finally now I've come up as the acting director general. It hasn't been easy as a lady, as a woman, but I think with perseverance and with good work, you do get the recognition.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a question about a woman's involvement in a business per se. Probably I was planning to ask you that later, but since you brought in this question that it wasn't easy for a woman to come up in the ladder in that, tell me two things, two questions I have rolled into one. One is, when you move on from business per se, that is legal per se, to business, or straight away joining as a management trainee with law qualifications, right? And like you said, you also echoed the ideas that almost all the speakers said, and they said that when you have a legal base, they take you seriously even at the initial interviews, which are non-legal jobs. So question is, once you get into that area, the business area per se, is it difficult for a person to go up in the ladder because you're a woman? Is there like discrimination for a woman in, I'm not talking in your institution alone, in general? And the other question is, one of the things people in my time and the ladies have said is why they want to be a practicing lawyer or a deed writing lawyer or somebody like that is because they think that they can manage it, the timing according to suit the duties and encumbrances they will have with them when the children comes and looking after running a house, right? So does that kind of a thing get compromised when you are doing a business job? Because when you look at the word career woman is attached to a businesswoman generally all over the world. And these people, like I spoken to bankers, even Kimali, and they were saying it's not an 8-hour job, it's probably a 12-hour job, right? So coming back to my two questions, is this difficult for a woman per se to, in the business field itself, go up, law or otherwise? Other thing is it going to compromise the commitment you have to have for your family and family life?
Well, if you look at the time that I joined, and I think things were a bit different back then. It was very male dominated. I think now people are more understanding and there's more sort of leeway in terms of recognizing women and their capabilities. But it was not easy because it was very male dominated. We didn't even have a single director as a female at that time when I joined. So, but what I believe is, if you are true to yourself and if you can show that you have the capabilities, the management itself will recognize that. And so you just have to, keep on persevering, have patience, and that would get you somewhere, because you don't need to compromise on what you believe in, and just, do your work. In terms of, it's not a 9-to-5 job at all. It entails so much more, but I've had a very supportive family. My husband has been very supportive and helpful in that sense. My children, I mean, they're my biggest champions. So they've been all along, they've understood when I needed to be out late, they understood that and they managed. So I think that has been part of my success, that they've been so helpful and supportive of me.
Yeah. So my I might have repeated because I want to know. It's not the discrimination per se, that question. The other one, for a woman to make it other than in the law career, because the freedom I'm talking of, it's kind of freelance. When you're a practicing lawyer, I mean, you get at least half a day free, right? You go to court and then you probably end up in your chambers, seniors chambers in the evening. So at least a half a day is there for you to do something. And if you're a deed lawyer, it's even much easier, and you can swivel around your work because this is not a signing of a registry or something like that. So, but when it comes to office where you have to clock in and clock out, and in the meantime you have to do everything, can you manage a family like that? Can you be successful in managing a family also with that? Or unless you have a very understanding children and husband like you, I mean, it is not the case always.
Yes, you can manage actually if you organize your day, if you know what has to be done, and if you prioritize the times that you really have to be there in person, then it is manageable, because that is half of the way that I've done things as well. Because when you have to be there, if it's a parents meeting, you have to be there. I mean, and you just take a leave or something and you go, because those are your priorities. And then when you come home, you have some quality time with your children. You check on their homework, you check that they are ready for the next day. So all of that is also done. So it's a matter of, saying, yes, I can do this. It can be done. It can be managed. And how you do it, how you fashion it out is a possible thing. So Chanakya, yes, it can be, the balance can be attained. It's up. I think it's just the will to do it.
So you do advise and advocate that a woman should not think twice on testing, despite being lawyers, young lawyers who are watching this and budding lawyers, you should not think twice, or if you want to test the waters in business field other than court practice, you should go ahead.
Definitely. I mean, if you just take BOI, for instance, in BOI itself, there are so many different functional departments. Like if you take industrial relations, for example, you need a legal background. So, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be at BOI. We have, under the BOI, we have over 1,600 enterprises, both foreign and local. Each of these companies need industrial relations people, experts, who can advise them. So that is like one area any aspiring young lawyer can specialize in. It doesn't have to be legal per se. It can be maybe policy advocacy, where you sort of look at free trade agreements, where you look at ILO conventions. So you don't need to limit yourself really into a particular, typecast kind of work in the legal field.
Yeah, can you elaborate a little bit on that? I was to come to that later also anyway. That means you are in the business of investment, right? Or in attracting investment. That is as a facilitator. So you just said there are about 1,600 institutions which are there, which might need lawyers to do other capacity jobs. So for a possible viewer of ours who's looking this, what are those opportunities which are available in the investment industry, especially under the current situation of the world? World just ended up pandemic, and now it's doubling with a war, right? So with this situation, what are the opportunities that young lawyers would have, non-legal, in the not only in BOI? I know it could be limited, but in the investment industry, especially those 1,600 places you say.
Yes. So starting from, like, you have the environmental aspects that have to be looked at. So there is a big need for those individuals who are specializing in the environmental industry. So with a legal background, it would be easy for someone to look into all the acts, the statutes, and advise these companies. So each of them have to comply in terms of environmental standards. So environment is one area. Taxation is another, where each of these companies are very interested in using ways to get the best out of corporate income taxes and other taxes that they pay. So taxation is another one, even in terms of compliances with agreements that are signed. The BOI itself strictly monitors the compliances. So you need a compliance officer in each of these enterprises to ensure that all the conditions that have been put into the agreement are complied with, in terms of employment, in terms of their locations, in terms of environmental standards, maybe the payment of fees and obtaining licenses. All of that has to be checked, and there has to be a compliance officer. So that again is an ideal area where a young lawyer can look into. So there are various other areas, like I said earlier, like maybe the negotiation skills. You need to be able to maybe look at the free trade agreements, bilaterally, the treaties that are there, and then advise investors that are coming in What are the advantages maybe under the FTAs with India or Pakistan? What are the special advantages that an investor could gain out of those? So they would be specialized advisors, investment advisors. So there are numerous areas, Janaka, that any young lawyer can look into in the investments area.
Right. Now, you said some very important areas. Now, in your case, you did a MBA subsequently, right? That was while you were in BOI. Why did you do that MBA? Was it that you found it is not possible to go forward in the ladder and to understand the theoretical underpinnings of investment and the trade and the business? Or is it just that you were accumulating qualification?
Well, it's maybe a combination of both, Chanakya, because when I was, as I said, I went into promotions and into investment appraisal. What I thought was it's better to have, like, although I did economics as my A-level subject, I thought it's better to get a better understanding, because when you're doing your master's in business administration, you do your economics, you do your accounting, you get an overall international relations perspective. So I thought I need to really, update myself. It's more than just getting a qualification. It was really to be current and to know how best to assess and also be of more value to even an investor or to the organization. So I had 3 young children at that time. And if I thought, okay, I'm going to wait till they are going to grow up or whatever, it would have never happened. So I juggled, I managed it. I used to go for lectures and then, come and burn the midnight oil. I attended to my children's work and then I somehow managed and did it. So I'm proud that I was able to do that, and all of you out there can do it. So don't let anything limit you. It's as far as you want to go. I mean, the bar is as high as you set it, and you can achieve it always.
Right. Now, my other question which is almost the same line is that is it necessary to have other qualification, because in the business you are in, investment business and investment facilitator, is it necessary to have other qualifications? Because in law you are not taught much about finances and banking, things that you would learn in banking, and basically what you taught in a BA Com or MBA. So in the absence of such qualifications, can you still climb up successfully in a institution like either it's yours or the other 1,600 institutions you did? Because I'm asking for a reason, because I'm crossing an analogy with one of our speakers. I can quote Kimali Vikramasinghe, who said she only had that barristers and law degree, and Kimali graduate from small level, entry level, ended up in a international bank CEO level. And she said she found that hands-on experience, hands-on learning was sufficient, and she did not want to even do a single banking exam. Didn't have to, right? Is that the case with everyone in investment industry also? Or your advice would be to gather other qualifications which are related to investment industry, like finances and BCom and MBA? What is your take on this?
Well, yes, experience. Yes, with experience, you can climb the ladder. But when you take the government sector, now this BOI is a semi-government organization. So when it comes to your climbing the ladder and going through the scheme of recruitment, you always get additional scoring if you do have more qualifications than the other person. So in one aspect, it helps in that sense. But when I did it, I never thought of it that way. But, fortunately, I had done it. So I did get my scoring at a higher level than the others. So I was able to go, from say, assistant manager, director to senior director, whatever, it helped. Yeah. So I would, and also I think it's important to be current, because when you go into, say, an MBA or any course, you meet very senior people as well as very young people. So you have a cross section of ideas and thoughts and how things happen, and you become very much current and alive with what is happening in the day-to-day in the current context. So my advice would be, yes, please go ahead, and whatever area you think that you want to be in, go ahead and it's not just for the qualification, just so that your knowledge is also updated. I think I would suggest to do that.
Now, other than qualifications and working the challenge, taking a challenge to work in this, what would be the qualities a young lawyer would be expected to have when you are working in non-legal capacity? What would be the qualities you were to elaborate?
I think what is important is that young lawyers, when they come in, should be open to ideas of others, and to be able to take in any advice or to look at how things are done, and then maybe go, to get into the system, and then very diplomatically approach if there are ways, if things have to be changed, be respectful, because sometimes you think, okay, you have studied so much, you've done your attorneys and you passed out, and you think, okay, I'm in such a position and people should be, very just listen to you or all that. So I think it's important that you respect others all the time, and put your ideas across in a way that is not offensive to others and which doesn't cause conflict, because that is the way that you can actually get on and get things done. And also, you should never be shy to ask for help or to ask for advice, because even I still ask for advice from others. I mean, not only my seniors, I mean, even my children. I ask them, okay, how do you do this? Because they are tech savvy. They know things that I don't know. So you should never be ashamed to reach out and ask someone who's gone through so many experiences. Okay, how did this happen? Yeah. Right? So I think that's important, to be humble enough to ask others and to learn from others. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Once you know how something's done, maybe you can improve on it. So I would advise them to always reach out to others and work together with others.
One of the questions, recurring words that were used in my previous speakers was when they were talking about what qualities people should have. It's the word leadership, leader, and attitude, right? What is your definition of a leader? A young person should, a leader as not as a person who has acquired all those qualifications or experience and become a leader finally, but a young leader should have. And what is the attitude young leader should have? What is your definition on those two words?
I would think a young leader is someone, it's not someone who is pushy or, throwing their weight around or anything like that. A young leader is someone who is also able to follow, someone who can set examples by demonstrating that they're capable of doing something as a team, not only singularly, but as a team player. And the attitudes they should have, as I said, is to be open to suggestions, open to other people's ideas, and then maybe very diplomatically, if that is not the way things should happen, to be able to get their ideas across and change the attitude of others without having any conflict situations. I think that is the way to build up a team and to lead the way, so that all of the stakeholders there are happy and can achieve whatever targets that are being looked at.
Right. And now in the investment industry, are there in the sense, when you consider the present state of Sri Lanka, and this, I want to actually touch upon specifically on the port city. The port city, is there something you can comment on what opportunities people would have? I know it's still in the embryonic stages. It's still being developed. The land is ready and investment has to come. But eventually, can young lawyers, actually have any hopes in having non-legal jobs in the port city project as well? Is there something you can comment on that?
Definitely, because the port city, unlike the rest of the country, is going to be a service-driven area. There's not going to be any type of manufacturing activities in that location. Right. In those 664 acres that have been reclaimed, it's all going to be service driven. It's like, for example, you have the marina, you have the villas, you have hospitals, international schools, you have apartments, the office complexes, the international financial centers. So everything is service driven. So definitely our young lawyers will have ample opportunities in that case, whether it is either now in the office areas, there'll be all the tech companies, the IT companies. So, and there'll be enough work for legal advisors even. I mean, even if they want to stay in the legal area, for investment advisors, there's more than enough opportunity. So I think, yes, there would definitely be opportunities for them.
Are there opportunities now? There are young lawyers who are watching this might want to apply, can apply, or is how does one reach out?
Yeah, so it could be like this, Shanaka. Now, in the port city itself is governed by the Port City Commission.
Separate commission, yes.
Yes, so the commission has been set up with the commission members, but I don't think they've really grown into anything bigger till the regulations and the development control regulations and other things are in place. So the Port City Commission itself will also need people to come in, but other than that, all the companies that come and set up at the port city would need the local expertise to run their businesses, even in HR, even in administration.
So what are the categories you see employment should be there? HR, legal, obviously.
Yes, the legal advisory, HR, administration, even compliances, because compliances is an area compliance officers will be needed in all of these. To see that the stringent conditions that are put in have been met, because if they don't, then they become, that they will be doing something illegal. So it's important that compliance officers are there to track that everything is done properly. So there is so much of space in that area.
Right. So now, traditionally, when we look at traditional instances, that is what we know as investment of Sri Lanka. Now we come to the mainland of Sri Lanka, and we see investment opportunities. When we say we generally see the investment in the apparel industry, like you said in the beginning, when you joined, there was a big boom of apparel industry, attraction, and then we see the tourism industry, which is some people could invest hotels and all that, and then of course now we see these apartments and real estate industry. But apart from this, what we see above across the board, what would be the new avenues of investment that would be available in Sri Lanka, in which you would find opportunities for lawyers in non-legal capacities? Are there any avenues that we can look at, or is it we have to expand on these existing areas?
No, actually, Janake, if I can share with you, the BOI itself has set up 2 new export processing zones, one in Erawur, that's for fabric and textile mills. That is an area which we have not had so thus far. We've been always importing our fabric. So one area we thought for backward integration purposes is to have a fabric milling park, and that has been set up. Similarly, we have a pharma zone in Araboka, that's in Hambantota, which has been set up, which has already got the environmental approvals, and people can come in and immediately start up. Also, an agro processing zone has been set up. That's also in Hambantota. Heavy industry zone has been set up. So these are new areas that have come in. A tech area has been set up. So there are 4 new areas that the young lawyers can look at when they're branching out, to look at these sectors and how they can.
Can you just elaborate when you say agro, when you say those categories, what will be the types of businesses per se that will come out from there? What will be the types of companies, genres of companies that will come out from there?
The types, if you take the pharmaceutical, it will be the pharma companies, maybe medicine, the pills, manufacturing, the saline, that type of activity will happen in the pharma zone. If you take the agro processing, that there we are targeting. I mean, Sri Lanka has so much of fruits and vegetables, which, as you know, most of the time with the glut, we just throw it. They have no way of having it processed and preserved. So the idea of having the agri park is to encourage investors, especially from Malaysia, Thailand, and such countries, which have the know-how and the expertise, to come and set up so that they can use the local cultivated products for export purposes. Heavy industries has been set up for cement, for steel, and related activities as such. And the technology is for tech-related high-end electronics and such, those kind of manufacturing projects. And Eravur, as I said, is for a fabric milling type of activity. So those are areas that our young lawyers can look at.
Yeah, technology-wise, will we never be opening up tech parks for like manufacturing or assembling vehicles and things like that? We will not have that expert area.
We do have some that have been approved. They still haven't commenced commercial operations. So there are some that are in place. And the technoparks itself, I mean, other than the BOI, the technology ministry itself has identified 5 locations for technoparks where startups or the digital nomads locally or internationally can come and set up. So it will be a fully fledged area where they just come and plug in and you start work. They don't have to invest in anything else. So these are in 5 locations in Gaul, Purnagala, Kandy, Norelia, and Dambulla. So
and you think if your young lawyers look at those areas, these things, and then they can find the companies that are going to come up there and find jobs there.
Yes, and not only to help others, they themselves can start up, Janaka, because when you take the tech industry and the investment thresholds, generally the BOI has thresholds for different types of sectors, but IT and techno and startup has a very low threshold. So even our young lawyers themselves can, get together and have their startup operations. So that's another area they can look at. It doesn't necessarily have to be that they're serving somebody else. They can maybe even do a joint venture, get someone from overseas and start a.
Yeah, but if they were to look for jobs, then where do they find information? Is it from your website or do you all facilitate, or there are separate websites or information desks for those what do you call those parks, investment parks?
Well, we don't have a systemized way of actually putting it out. So it is actually maybe when you see it is announced in the papers that such and such a company has now come in and they have, set up a company, they have signed an agreement. So maybe that's one way of knowing that such a company has come in. But the companies themselves reach out, they put out their advertisements because the tech area especially, they find it a bit challenging to find people. So generally it is announced, it is advertised, and they can apply.
Now, you mentioned several times over the word compliance would be an area as lawyers will have. It's partly legal also, I know, kind of a job. Now, as you know, about 3 days ago or 3 to 4 days ago, we passed, we are one of the countries to successfully write into law the Data Protection Bill, Private Personal Data Protection Act. So now it's a law. Very soon it will become law. And this act brings a duty on most employers as well as different companies on protecting data. When you say compliance, protection of data in the future, will it be part of the compliance job, and will there be jobs on that area? I know your area is not data protection, but will it be part of a compliance in a company like or institution like yours?
It should be, Chanakya, with the changing regulations and with new legislation coming in. We also have to incorporate those into our agreements now. Thus far, we may not have looked at that particular aspect, but with the passing of those laws, yes, we will have to include it so that then the enterprise itself has a duty to be compliant with the statutes. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Now, is there any special, if I were to ask you qualities or advice elaborately you want to tell, we'll say if your children are, they are going to be lawyers, if they or anybody want to be lawyers, in general, other than what you said, is there things that you would like to tell them as an advice?
Well, yes, I think first of all, in whatever you do, honesty and integrity is number one. So always be honest and always have integrity in what you do, and always be true to who you are. And then you can always be proud of what you have achieved. You don't have to compromise just because you want to get the next promotion or to get up the ladder. I would also say to identify your weaknesses. Identify your weaknesses so that you can have a team that would complement those missing areas. Don't be threatened by people who may know something you don't know. Just make sure that, okay, these are the areas I'm not good at. Okay, my team is going to be stronger in those areas. And that way you'll be able to, succeed and lead in a better way. And I would also say, never be afraid to continuously learn. I mean, learn from others, learn from maybe people doing a course or joining a seminar, continuously learn, because that's what keeps you active and that's what keeps you current in any place. Don't be complacent. Okay, I've done my attorneys. That's enough for me. I'm good in this or whatever. Keep on learning. And I think lastly, I would say, don't be afraid to ask for anything when you're doing something, even if it's a race. Don't be afraid to ask. I mean, there's no harm done in asking. So keep on asking and creating wherever you are. Be add value to any place that you are in, and be happy. Have your goals and be happy.
Yeah. Now, taking you back to one of the questions you mentioned about, you don't have to work for any of these necessarily to other people. You're a young lawyer, because these parks are there, this investment park, this whatever areas you have opened up, and you can start your own investment. One of the main question that will come to immediately people who are watching might like the idea, because one of the reasons we become lawyers, most people become lawyers, is to have a, as we call it, be your own boss, right? So if you have your own company, you can be your own boss as well. But the question is, where can the initial capital injection come to do a startup business? What would you and your institution, the BOI, help? It doesn't have to be young lawyer. It could be any person with any degree. And of course, since you're focusing on young lawyers who want to start up, maybe in the IT, maybe in agro, maybe in some other tech, or any of those four parks you said. How would you support? Is there a mechanism to support startups in finance?
Okay, unfortunately, BOI does not have a financing arm. So what we do is we scrutinize the investment proposals, and the investors come with their own investment financial backgrounds. But if you don't necessarily have to come into BOI, because as I said, in the IT startup sphere, there is no minimum investment. It's a matter of if you are capable of renting a space, because you will not even have to buy your own computers. If you're capable of finding the finance to go and set up in these technoparks, which is fully equipped, the Wi-Fi, everything is there, then it's a matter of you starting out and then growing from there. So if you do need the financial background, you may have to go into something like the Regional Development Bank or such banks which give startups and such young entrepreneurs loans at very nominal interest rates. So BOI itself cannot help in that aspect, Chanakya, unfortunately.
Right. Any final thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
Yes, I just want to wish all the young lawyers a very successful future, and want to tell them, to remind them, like, being a lawyer gives you that edge to go anywhere, into any field, because you have the analytical skill. You look at things differently and you're able to solve issues. So that is your, the key to success. I mean, in whatever field you go into, because you bring that value into that room. You look at things in a different perspective, and you're also capable of looking at, the upside and the downside. Okay? So go ahead. I mean, go into any area. I mean, don't be limited by thinking you have to only do court work or deed work or be in a corporate office. Have belief in yourself and go forward and do whatever you like doing, because that's what will make you successful in life. So I wish you all the best.
Weerakone, Acting DG of BOI, thank you very much for joining us this evening, Himali. I know you're a very busy person and taking time off and joining us. Thank you very much. And for those very valuable thoughts for our young lawyers in this part of the series. This series is, as you would know, part of the Bar Association's initiation on continuing legal education and continuing professional development. And your thoughts were very valuable. And we thank you once again and hope to see you some other time. Thank you,
Chanakya. And thank you to Rajiv and the seminars committee for inviting me. I wish you success in all your future programs. Thanks and good night.
Thank you again. That's Beyond Code Practice for today, our 8th episode on the webinar series of Beyond Code Practice. We will continue with more people like Renuka and other speakers we had on different walks of life, but with a background and a startup qualification of law, and they will share with you their thoughts and their advices how you as a lawyer but can still make it great in other trades, businesses and industries. So stay tuned for that, to get to know more information. You can if you want to know our next speakers, basically just subscribe to the Bar Association text message service and also the email service. And also, if you have missed any of those our webinars, you can go to the BASL YouTube site and watch all our webinars all over again. We will meet you soon. And like I said, if you are subscribed to our the text messages of the BASL and the emails, you will hear who will be the next speaker very soon in the coming week. Thank you for joining